Hi, I'm Allison Eyring, organization psychologist, CEO, and endurance athlete. I've spent the last 30 years helping companies solve the people and organization challenges of growth. I've worked with all types of CEOs and business leaders around the world, but it really takes a special leader to successfully grow a business at a rapid pace of change. I call them growth leaders. In this episode, we'll discuss the challenge of setting vision and inspiring action. I'm going to speak with Andrew Sotiropoulos, Vice President for Asia Pacific and Japan for Pure Storage, one of the fastest growing enterprise IT companies in the world. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, Allison. Wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Andrew, I really love your company name, Pure Storage. I guess you're in the business of storage.
Yes, in its purest form. Yes.
Exactly. Actually, storage is a service, right? So you're in the business of flash technology. Is that right?
Yes. So enterprise storage is the technology space that we play in. It's where all of our data goes to sit, whether we're using something that's on-prem or on the cloud. And we sell it in two different ways, primarily as CapEx, where clients acquire and own the asset, or we can provide the technology as a service, which is what you referred to as pure as a service.
Data sitting in the cloud somewhere.
On the cloud, in a data center somewhere. It sits somewhere physically, but colloquially we all refer to it as in the cloud. It's the term du jour.
So, Andrew, in your role as Vice President at Pure, it's clearly going to be important to set a clear and inspiring vision for growth that will allow you to motivate others to come along. So how do you take such a complex technology, something that might not be so easy for people to understand, and turn that into a vision that inspires and motivates others?
Well, it's a great question. It's probably the question of leadership perennially. And it's the difference between managing, which is oriented towards tasks, and leadership, which is to inspire and to ask people to perform at their highest levels on a consistent basis. So the way that I was taught many, many moons ago was to keep it simple, keep it relevant, keep it clear, keep it consistent. So make sure that whatever goals you're setting are clearly describable and relatable to the people that you talk to. Talk to them on a regular basis, have milestones, whether you want to use a mountaineering analogy of base camp, first base and the like, that people can see that you're making progress towards that vision, but have a defined goal at the end of it. And that brings people together towards that common purpose.
So you use you use the word relatable, and yes. I'm curious, because you have a really big region of the world. And how do you make sure that the ideas that you have are relatable in different cultures that are so different from one another?
Well, again, that's a great question because language is different, culture is different. Foundationally, however, business is business. The real relatable item is if you're keeping your message simple, it does transcend culture. You do slow down the way you speak. You try to use language that is clear and expressive. You don't use colloquialisms. You don't use jargon, because you have to be aware that it is a second language. And I do speak a second language, being of Greek heritage. And I'm very conscious when people speak to me that if they slow down, I understand. If they speak quickly, normally I pick up every third, fourth word in the sentence.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying, because it's one of the things I always say to people is to learn how to internationalize their English.
Yes.
And the example I use is the word right has 27 different definitions, but the word correct has one. And so if the language of your business is a second language for many people, make it easy for them. And that's a way to be much more inclusive as a leader as well.
It is. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And you learn this. There's no book that teaches you this. You learn along the way. You make mistakes. The old saying of you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes, which is very true. But it is something with time and experience that you come to learn and appreciate.
I want to ask you maybe a bit of a personal question. So think about a time in your career, maybe earlier in your career, when you had a leader that shared a clear and inspiring vision that really motivated you. And how did that impact you in a personal way? And what did you do about it?
Well, by nature, I'm very competitive. And, I started playing sport when I was 6. So we grew up in an era where someone won and someone lost. And I hate losing. So I always connect and relate to leaders that set goals for me, that set goals that are stretch, not something I can do on a Tuesday, but something that I'd have to really stretch my thinking, my engagement, my collaboration. How do I do this? And whiteboard it with my teammates. That really energizes me. So when someone sets me a vision or a goal that is outside of my reach today, that inspires me because it's a challenge for my thinking, my behavior, and my collaboration.
So I guess you got to really know what makes people tick.
You do, yeah, and not everyone relates to that, by the way. Not everyone is competitive. So you have to be conscious as well in leadership that you amplify an attribute of yours that connects with the audience that you're talking to. So you have to be many people call this is situational. If you're talking to a broad-based team and you have to lift your messaging to a level that is relatable to everyone. If you're in a small team bunkered down, then you can be competitive and aggressive if that's what the goal is of the particular session that you're in. So you do have to be aware of the audience to be able to communicate and connect.
Sounds like you also have to find that balance between having the big idea and the big inspiration, but then at the same time understanding that people are really different and that different things are meaningful to them in different ways.
Yeah, so many of these things that you refer that trickle to mind, like most people can't handle more than 2 or 3 big ideas simultaneously coming at them. It's not an aptitude test. It's just behavioral studies have shown that, and so you have to be very crisp and very thoughtful about what you say if you want people to absorb it, and not have their eyes glaze over as you're trying to communicate a message, and have them absorb it and relate to it.
That's really great, Andrew. So I am now going to ask you to match wits with our Prodigy software that guides people to grow in the flow of work, because we know that experience is a great teacher, and we're going to we have a chance to learn from you as an amazing growth leader. So are you ready?
Sure.
Great. Now, what I'm going to do is ask you to give us some practical advice related to a sprint in Prodigy that's called Set Vision and Purpose. And what I'd like to do is ask you to talk to me as if you're giving me some advice on actions that I can take to set a vision and purpose with my team.
Well, I would start off by looking at the environment, asking some questions around the stakeholders that you're looking to engage with, reinforce the importance of getting their buy-in, and making sure that you connect to what's important to them by understanding what's important to them. And so that draws alignment. It's really easy to be an individual. It is incredibly difficult to be part of the team and get everyone to agree to do something different. So that would be how my questioning and my coaching would align towards those 3 or 4 points.
I love that. In fact, your answer was so crazily similar to what Prodigy said. In fact, if a Prodigy has a number of different actions, the first is engage stakeholders, so very much like what you said, and the second is get input. And
right.
One of the things that Prodigy also encourages is around identifying value add. And so it's around thinking about, so how do, what's the value add that you bring and that the team brings into the organization? So maybe thinking a little bit about that.
Yes. That's incredibly important. The undertone to this is always what I call passive resistance. People participate, they nod their head, but are you truly connecting to what they're trying to achieve? And therefore, will they engage versus participate in the vision setting?
So it has to both be inspiring from the outside in, but then you have to be inspired from the inside out.
Exactly. Well put.
Andrew, what would be some of the behaviors that you would expect to observe in your team as you're executing a sprint around setting vision and purpose? What would you like to see people practice every day?
Well, it's an interesting one, because when you're trying to, like I said, pure at the moment, trying to grow exponential to the marketplace, you have to have attitude, positive attitude. You have to be inspirational. You have to motivate people, in particular in this COVID world that we're all been living in, and that inability to engage as humans in the way we used to. You have to inspire people in your message, be aware of what they're going through, demonstrate respect as a consequence of that. Because it's much stronger as a leader if you're selfless rather than selfish, right? It's not about me being successful. It's about you and us as a team being successful. So inspiring the team in whatever way you define that, I think is a pretty critical behavior on top of having just a positive attitude. Anything is solvable. You give the right amount of attention, at the end of the day, anything is possible. And that's why we continue to succeed and progress.
I love that. So Prodigy also says a similar message. And one is around having an inspiring message, which is about creating a message that helps you paint a picture of the future. And yes, that you use that to motivate, support, and demonstrating respect as well. You talked about that. I really love it. And Prodigy talks about being positive and respectful, even if others are feeling critical or sarcastic or negative, because that sometimes happens when we're trying to take people in a different direction.
And you have to accept that. You have to take a deep breath. You have to acknowledge it, let them ride out their 7 stages of grief, and then take them on the journey after that. Because everyone goes through it to some way or degree. Even those that are the most adaptive to change do have the need to get it off their chest, so to speak, just a vent. And then you just absorb it, move on.
I love that. That's really hard for me as a manager, to be honest, because I find that if I'm really excited about something, I really want everyone else to be excited about it. And I feel really disappointed if they don't. So yes. I think what you're saying is great advice, which is really being patient, really listening, allowing people to express their views and giving them space to come along to get excited.
It is. And I think it's the environment sometimes that drives it. I know when I'm with the Australian team, my speech accelerates, my energy levels accelerate. You become faster because you're in that environment. But when I talk with the Japan team, because I'm so conscious that English is a second language, I consciously pull back my speed of speech, my speed of thought, and that allows me to be a little bit more collaborative and listening. So sometimes it is the environment that you're in that allows you to demonstrate that behavior as a leader. And you can fall into the other trap, which is a very natural trap that says, why aren't you as passionate, as energized as I am about this? Can't you see how wonderful this is?
Well, you're making me wonder something. And I think this is a tough one. I want to hear your views. And these days, a lot of people talk about being authentic. But it turns out that sometimes you need to inspire people and, you have to find a way to be inspired, but maybe in your heart, you're really not feeling 100% excited. So in fact, you're not being 100% authentic, but you're behaving in a way that your team needs you to behave. Say a little bit about that.
It's an interesting, this one is a big conversation. Being authentic is being yourself. Being yourself should allow you, when you're not feeling the best, to say, I'm not feeling the best, without risk or fear. And that comes through confidence in yourself and what you're bringing to the table as a leader. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're being yourself. You can't fake enthusiasm. You can't fake the selflessness. If you try, you'll get caught out. So I think being authentic is being yourself, whatever that means. Sometimes in the group that we're in at the moment within Pure, they're the really energized human beings. They're the sarcastic human beings. They're the quiet human beings. That's just being themselves. Doesn't make them good or bad. It's the melting pot. So I think if people recognize that, if you open up and say, I'm having a pretty tiresome day today, woke up at 6, been on calls since 6 a.m., I'm feeling a little bit tired, then you're setting the scene with the person that you're talking to. You're being authentic. You're being true rather than faking, hey, great to see you. I just got up an hour ago, had my coffee, and I'm just here. People will see that eventually.
Yeah, I think that's really nice. It's just really about, I think sometimes we think that being authentic means that you can't be negative or you have to show a vulnerability or something. And I like what you're saying, which is about kind of allowing your whole self to show up and allowing others to do the same thing, and still having a vision, having a point of view, expressing it, and then allowing people to maybe take their time and be able to follow you. So not forcing them to be positive when they're not feeling that yet, but also not faking positivity when you're not 100% there either.
Yeah. And I think it's just being human. At the end of the day, what this COVID world of the last 15 months has taught us, it's one of the few instances in our generation anyway that everyone, when you talk to someone in London, New York, San Francisco, Tokyo, and they talk about lockdowns, they talk about quarantine periods, they talk about pandemic, we can all relate. And it's one of the few instances in life that allows us to be that. So being human in your interactions with people, I think actually gives you a lot of kudos as a leader because you're connecting with them as a human being.
Well, Andrew, I really love talking to you, and I really appreciate the fact that you're in like such a high-tech world, and yet you've been, everything you've talked about has been really very people-oriented. And as a psychologist, I, of course, really appreciate that. And so thank you so much for taking time to share your lessons of experience with us on Growth Leaders.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you for the invite, Alison, and I wish you all the very best.
Well, thanks for listening today. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to Growth Leaders wherever you get your podcast. Leave a comment and a rating. We'd love to hear what you think. If you have comments or questions about growth and growth leadership, be sure to mail us at growthleaders@organizationsolutions.com. Growth Leaders is produced by Organization Solutions in partnership with MediaCorp.